Okay, let's start. Welcome everyone for today's Asian philosophy, and we're going to have Sashi talk about continue our journey about Bhagavad Gita, and total has 18 chapter, and today we are going to deal with chapter 14. Okay, Sashi, please.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining, guys. So we will continue the journey here. So we have a bunch of people here. I'm not sure. Can somebody who has attended the 13th chapter please raise your hand here, maybe, on your Zoom? Anybody else? So everybody is new. Yeah, Jason is here, but Um, so yeah, I guess the question, oh, I see Jyoti, right? Jyoti has been, yeah, hi Jyoti. I think I haven't seen you in a while, I guess. Uh yeah. Thanks for joining. Um Okay, so I guess what we can do is we are going to try to talk about the context. I'm going to set the context of Gita, but we will talk about something generically in a way, in the sense to try to address what chapter 14 wants to do. Um, so, okay, so I guess let me share. Oh, can I just go ahead and share my screen, I guess? Um,
So sorry, I have to make you a co-host. Just
that's
one.
right. Mhm.
Okay, you can do it.
Hmm, okay. Okay. So we are, if I was to go to the beginning, so
Sashi, can you maximize your screen?
yeah, I will. Like just trying to get to the right place. Okay, so here what we are doing is there has been a bunch of so the Gita that we are trying to look at is uh, Gita has been written about by many people. So there is the original Sanskrit text, and there is different presenters have taken the ideas from Gita. So Mahatma Gandhi's thing that his translation is one of them that has been given for as the reading material. But then there is also Aurobindo Ghosh's reading material that we are trying to look at, and based on that, we just kind of talk about it generically, in the sense that what that chapter intends to convey. Uh, so coming back to where we left, so the first uh, few chapters here, right? Um, First six chapters, they talk about, so I'll read about that in a moment. Karma yoga. So here the way you can think about this is we are living in this world, and there are basically, if you look at ourselves, there are lots of me's, right? So the idea here is, as we are going about in this world, um, can we possibly reduce the number of selves that we have? Because there is a self that we portray in front of our spouse, front of our kids, front of so depending on where we are, usually our interaction changes, right? So here the idea in this one, Karma Yoga, was that, all the interactions that you are trying to do, how can you basically take that karma, meaning the action, and convert that into yoga? Yoga meaning not the physical yoga that people are familiar with, but yoga here means the joining of uh, us or me to that, that we don't know what that is. But it could be God. And one thing that I have tried to do throughout these different series is that how can we just look at the philosophical aspect of this? There's always a religious aspect and all of that stuff, right? But we have tried to not bog down ourselves on the mythology portion of it, but more on the philosophical side of it. So joining oneself to, you can think of this as the whole universe in a way, right? Or oneness, sort of a thing, right? So here, in these first six chapters, what comes out of this is, you want to live in this world and, reduce the number of me's, and basically reduce the ego, if you will. Then there is, sorry, oh, my bad. Let me just fix this typo here. What I meant here was 7 to 12. Then we go into Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is where you're trying to focus yourself on one you out there. Meaning, in this, the heavy context here tends to be, from the Hinduism context, the focus is on one particular god, let's say, like Krishna, or, we talked about different bhakti movement saints, like Meera and Kabir, and there was many more that we kind of covered. So there, the idea was that when you focus on that one, and that one becomes your everything, then basically you start seeing that you in everyone, right? So it is sort of um, bhakti also means actually oneness. So vibhakti means division, and bhakti means bringing together. And so you are, by doing this devotion, in English, the translation would be devotion here. But I mean, actually, devotion is also such a nice word. I mean, there's something about devoting, and then there's the God that you are seeing outside there, and then there's a devotion, right? So here, reduce the number of me's, and then you stay with one me, right? One you. So the idea is that focus on one. And then we started talking about in chapter 13 all the way through 18, it's about Gyan Yoga. Gyan means knowledge, or wisdom in its purest form. So what is worth knowing, really? And today we're going to talk about attention, and how does it lead to all me? So there is, in the text, there is a constant reference to me. That me, that the main character who is presenting Gita is Krishna. So Krishna is now a god, right, for Hindus. So he's presenting that to Arjuna, who is the warrior, and the idea is Arjuna has gotten dejected and confused about the war. He's a great warrior, but he doesn't want to fight suddenly. And this is the war he's trying to fight against his arch nemesis, if you will, his own cousin brother. And on the other side is the all his family in a way, his grandpa and his teacher and everybody is fighting from this bad guy. And on this side, it is him and Arjuna, and Krishna has decided to not Krishna is his friend, so he has decided to be just the charioteer. So he's driving him around, and Arjuna says, is it worth for me to fight, do all this bloodshed, and kill all of these people? These are my people, and wouldn't that? I mean, I'm going to carry so much sin. I'm going to cause so much. Chaos, women will become widows and all of that stuff. So chapter 1 is all about Arjun sort of confused about the war, and he is almost kind of telling Krishna what is the right thing to do. So he wants to go off, give up everything, the kingdom and everything, and he just wants to go off into the mountains because that was the norm back then. And the religion, the common practice back then was to become a so-called sannyasi. Sannyasi, in English context, maybe it means monk. So you just go to a monastery or, go to the woods and be by yourself, sort of a thing. And that's when Krishna explains a lot in chapter 2. And chapter 2 is actually a summary of, if you will, all of these 18 chapters, but it is so thick with information that, he doesn't get it, right? So then he starts breaking it out, convincing him that what you think is knowledge is just something that you have heard. That's not the knowledge. And what you think is becoming a monk or a sannyasi or renunciate or a renunciator, or renunciate, right? For renunciation point of view. That's not the right renunciation. The renunciation is how you can live in this world and how you can do all the activities and stay detached or not have an attachment, right? So in a way, in chapter 14, 13 through 18 is again sort of like he's dissecting chapter 2 further. So he talks about how people can have different paths. We only know how to work with others, like we live in a transactory world. We like to, our daily living and all of that stuff is our focus, pleasure, joy, amassing wealth, that's a norm. This is not a new thing. This has always been there in the past, and all the time it's going to stay with us, right? So given that, he says, what can you do if you want to live in this world, right? You got to live in this world. But then if you really truly want to understand what a renunciate is, and if you really truly think that this war is a disaster, so let me tell you what you can start doing, how you can be a renunciate right here. And you got to fight the war. I mean, this war has been brewing for a long time. And even if you leave, the war is going to happen. People are going to be butchered. It doesn't matter if you're going to be here or not, but this is a journey of you, Arjuna. Do you want to be here and continue with the path that you have chosen this entire life? And this is a culmination of your, so many years of whatever you have done, this is what has brought you here, and you are, by profession, you are a warrior. So you're meant to conduct this war. And you are going to either lose or you're going to win. Both the things are fine, because as a warrior, your name is going to be, people are going to respect you. If you win, and even if you lose, you're going to be a martyr. That's what you have signed up for. But if you run away from this war, you yourself are not going to be able to live with yourself. And then, Arjun starts telling him, no, you're wrong. And, this is not what I've heard. And, this is what other people say. And, this seems right, like I need to be non-violent and this and that. And he says, okay, let's try to understand what does it mean to read something from somewhere and try to understand for ourselves what is the right path. So one has to create one's own path in a way. Um, so, so in chapter 12, he kind of says, as he's talking about, he's already talked about karma and bhakti, devotion. So, while he kind of paints a picture here that yes, this notion of God is an instrument for you to try to understand yourself. Definitely, you shouldn't be getting stuck with the idea of devotion or the tradition or the rituals and all of that stuff, right? So which is what has happened, right, for most of the humanity here with all the different religions. It has become more about rituals and all of that stuff. So there are clear verses in between chapter 7 and 12 where he's saying, look, it's not about just that. While the rituals are good, but try to understand the intent behind rituals. You are trying to go towards yourself, not just continuously, focusing on the rituals and all that, right? So he says, better indeed is knowledge than practice, practice being the rituals. So knowledge, which is the jnana, he says that is better. Then knowledge, meditation is better, meaning you want to bring we're going to talk about what this is, the attention, gathering knowledge and all of that stuff is good. But ultimately, you need to sit with yourself and your own suffering and try to understand what you're going to do at that given moment. What is your responsibility? What is that? And that requires meditation. Now, we do understand meditation. We understand yoga from what we have heard from all kinds of various people and all these different yoga studios that we have around here, right? But that's not what this book is talking about. But because he's talking to a warrior and he's talking to us and everybody, he says, yes, more than meditation, meditation will happen. But before even better than meditation is the renunciation of the fruit of action, because, our day-to-day thing, even when we are doing meditation, we have to survive. So we are going to be working. We are going to have some action. So this by far is the key message of Gita is, whatever action you're doing, you want to renounce the fruit doesn't mean you don't take the fruit. The idea is that mentally, you don't want to get hung up on the winning part or the losing part. So in this case, what happened with Arjuna was that he was so proud of himself to be such a great warrior. He said, I'm going to win. All these people are going to get killed. And I feel sorry for them. So here, Krishna is indirectly trying to tell him, like, why are you so proud of yourself? Like, why do you think that you're going to win? You might lose too. And, things can be different. So renunciation of the fruit of action also means that, fruit is going to come in the future. So if you look at our day-to-day lifestyle, we are always not here. We are always out there, like in future, in the sense that, I'm doing this because I'm going to get that, because I'm going to get that, because I'm going to get that, as if right now I'm just going to focus on my work, and I'm going to not be happy. I'm going to be happy once I get something. But once I get that, we're not quite happy, because we are always like less than something. So then we are putting more action to get the next thing. And so what happens is this, when we are focused on the fruit of action, we are always living in tomorrow. But also, if you look at why we do action and how do we conduct action, a lot of that is based on not what you see right in front of your eyes as to what is the response that you need to have for that particular action that you have been called for, but we are biased by all of our past memories, right? So we have all these memories which are always partial truths, meaning they're lies. So they're not the holistic memories at all, but those memories are what kind of drives us to this now. And we say, okay, I'm going to work on this problem, but I'm going to work on this problem because, remember in the past that happened, and then in the past that happened, that happened, that happened. So it kind of biases your way of looking at that action completely. So that's something that we're going to cover today. So he says that is your enunciation, right? When you are coming at the action, don't worry about the future, which is the fruit, and look at the action completely, brand new with, actually, meditation is the right word for that, and we are going to cover that today, which means that you're constantly in meditation, not just by sitting down and holding your hands like this and quiet and all. That's not meditation, right? As we are going to see, the jnana. On renunciation follows the peace, right? And then in chapter 13, they who with the eye of knowledge perceive this difference between the field and the knower. So what happened in chapter 13 onwards was that he started talking about how I can see this computer. I can see you guys on Zoom. I can see you are out there. I can see the trees out there. I can see that other house there. I can see the field. But I can also see my thoughts. I can see that I get angry. I can see that I'm getting sad. So there is a knower deep. We all have that. And then there's all this known, which he calls as field. But then he also establishes that the knower is all one. Like there's no your knower and my knower. There's only one knower. And that is something that was important in chapter 13. And we're going to talk more about it. So they who with the eye of knowledge perceive this difference between the field and the knower of the field, and the liberation of beings from Prakriti. Prakriti is the field, and the Purusha is the knower. They attain to the supreme, right? So here the point is that, and we're going to talk about what this separation would mean like, right, here. But we're going to spend some time on knowledge itself, right? So one question to ask is, has religion, philosophy, books, there's like millions and gazillions of books, right? And different kinds of philosophies and different religions. But we look around, right? We still are suffering. We have the same problem, like people killing each other, religious fights, the same kind of skirmishes, and people being jealous, or as you look at the world, you start coming closer to us, and we have the same problem as Arjuna, which is like, we are confused about what is the right thing to do, and you're always worried like, oh, if I do this, something bad gonna happen, or that's gonna happen, this is gonna happen, right? So the confusion is part of our life. We are always confused, looking at everything that we are doing, questioning our action and all of that stuff. And, Gita has been around, which is what we are talking here, Bible, Quran, Talmud, so many books, right? But these are books. This is something that is outside of you. And it is there. That has been there for ages. I mean, Hinduism, Hindu people, Indian people, they swear by Gita, right? That's their main thing. But it's not like Indians are happier. They are the same, same problem, same religious wars are happening in India too. So yet here we are trying to learn about Gita. So what does that mean, right? I mean, we're going to learn this, or, some of you just joined now out of curiosity, I guess. But what is driving this curiosity? What are we trying to do with this, all these sessions that we are doing, and all the different philosophy sessions that Jason is doing, right? I mean, is it impacting you? What is the suffering that you have that drives you to come to these sessions? And what the reading of even a simple book like Alice in Wonderland, what does that do to you, right? Is it because you want to bring about a change, or is it more to collect knowledge, right? That, you can say to people that, yes, I've read Alice in Wonderland, right? I think that's something that one needs to truly consider. And that comes out pretty strong in these later chapters, right? And today's inspiration for me, for rest of these 6 chapters, is going to be this person, Jiddu Krishnamurti. If there is anybody among our set of philosophers, I guess, on the planet, who really strongly talk about knowledge, meaning knowledge of self, not knowledge that you get from the books, investigating within, and which is what this whole field and knower thing is, right? So if you look at the approach that Gita takes, is that, well, you got to clean your action, but in reality, in chapter 2, after chapter 1, the dejection, Krishna already tells him everything that he has to tell in chapter 12 through 13 through 18. So it's not like he did not tell him the ultimate knowledge upfront. And we also get that. I mean, we not get it, but we read it, right? So immediately it is presented as a solution, right? You need to know yourself, not just take some words that you have heard from your uncle, or your some other guru or some other book and all of that stuff. That's what Arjuna was presenting. He said, so Krishna is asking him, is this really your knowledge, or you're just like reiterating what you have heard from others? But then, because he doesn't understand it, and we all are in that phase, right? We all think that we have read this, we know this, we're doing the right thing. Yet one question to ask yourself or oneself is, are we really happy in our lives? Because that is the ultimate goal, isn't it? The goal is not collecting so many books or collecting so many philosophies. That's not the goal. The goal is, am I happy in my life? Right? And if this particular book is not making me reach there, then something is not working out, or this investigation, I'm not able to do that internally. So because Arjuna is not ready, because we live in this transactory world, we are always looking for ready-made answers. So in the sense that, oh, you tell me how to do meditation, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to hope that something better is going to happen 2 months from now or 6 months from now, because we have an expectation out of that. So because there is that, he tries to walk you through, okay, fine, you guys are going to do action, despite the fact that I've tried to explain to you that that's not the way to approach it, but maybe start making yourself humble through those actions. Try to understand this other human being. When you are trying to take care of everybody as the same, the sorrow that you feel within might lower. Your humility is going to bring you certain kind of glimpses into this. And then he talks about, okay, a lot of religious people, what does that mean? What is the point of praying to God? What is the point of bringing the flowers to God or offerings to God? What does that even mean? And now a lot of that is in the context of Vedas or Hindu, but the same thing can be applied for any other thing, like all the rituals that most religions go through. And then, so there is a path that is curved to get to a place. So we might think that God is sacred here between 7 to 12, or my action is sacred up here in chapter 1 through 6, right? And we're somehow going to get to that ultimate spiritual nirvana by going through these chapters. That's our approach. But what Jiddu Krishnamurti does is he says, no, none of that is going to help you. And he says that sacred, or the final, thing, truly understanding this notion of God, you need to have a holistic mind. Holistic mind is going to allow something holy. Holy has nothing to do with Hindu, nothing to do with Christianity, nothing to do with Muslim or Quran or Talmud, nothing. Holy just means that you are holistic. and you are willing to understand the nature of universe in general. And now once you have the holistic mind, meaning all the jealousies and attachments and everything kind of dissolve, that's when now you're ready to really understand yourself, a philosophy that is being presented, and all of that, right? So knowledge of self. And the other person that I'm going to mention later on is probably the closest one is going to be maybe Socrates, right? At least in my spectrum of people. But, some of the things that we're going to talk about is something from J. Krishnamurti here. So I'm going to spend more time on knowledge before we jump into the field and knower. But it's an interesting discussion for us to know. I found it really interesting. Um, uh, so if we look at ourselves, who am I, sort of a thing, right? Or who are we? We are but mere thoughts and words. So Jason is Jason, I'm Shashi, and there is a little bit about me, but there is this persona, there is this, something that comes across as I'm Indian, and I'm talking about Gita, and somebody on your side might be Christian, and they're like, oh, it's Gita, it's their thing. So we are trying to understand that. Our thing is Bible, right? Or something like that. Like, there's always we have created this I and you, but also these groups. And a lot of this, if you look at it, it's a miasma of words, labels that, think about it, right? And what we are building over time is illusory memories, like we said. We, over these so many years that we have lived on this planet, when we look at ourselves here, all we can talk about is all these different memories. And, nowadays, we capture so many photos, right? And they also like try to remind us about this certain place, that place, or meeting these people and all of that stuff, right? So there is that collection of memories. But if you look at those things, they're not 100% accurate, right? So that is a perspective that you have. And the other person, when he looks at that particular memory that you pull out from your memory bank, the other person might have a completely different reaction to that memory, meaning his perspective is different. So this is where the elephant and six blind men kind of that moral story kind of comes into play. But if you look at the way education system is built around. Now, to live in the transactional world, yes, you do need to leverage your memory to remember certain facts about math or engineering, or how to use a stove and all of that stuff. So there is a reason that exists. But none of that prepares us. We think that for our psychological world, we are also leveraging the same kind of concepts that we tend to use outside in the outward world, which is, oh, I read about that, and if only I can be like that person, because this is not good. I am not good. I want to be like that person. And so this is that's the, like, I want to be that because that's the perspective that you have of that other person. So education is about always, and I'm going to become that. So it is going to come in future. Um, and a lot of the times, it's accumulation. It's just, we are collecting this. And the idea is we are going to shelf it. We're going to put it in our library, and it's going to come to our benefit at some point in time. But, we hope that we're going to remember some of this, and it is going to help us, be that what we want to be. And a lot of that information, that knowledge that we are collecting, because it is based on memories, because memories, we have already said, they are illusory or partial, accurate. Knowledge also tends to be sort of incomplete, right? Nobody can say they know physics 100% or math 100%, or they just know this humanity 100%, or know exactly how the universe has happened and all that, right? And so what we are collecting in a way is all the things that people have known. So there's no more investigation that you have to do. This is a formula, like a Pythagoras theorem, that has been given to us. So in a way, it's dead. Now you can use it, but it's dead. there's no life there. Now you can build on top of it, which is what we tend to do is, we take that idea and then build on top of it. And one of the things J. Krishnamurti says is that because you're building out of these sort of broken concepts that you have learned, the solutions that you come up with are corrupt, not in the money type of corrupt sense, but corrupt in the sense that it is broken. And it does lead to a lot of, human corruption and all of that stuff because, a lot of these actions, one of the biggest driver tends to be greed. But in JK's world, J. Krishnamurti's world, he says that, if you come to this with a different mindset, you're not going to, it's not going to lead to greed and create all these problems that we have today. So one of the things that he keeps bringing up is this notion of mental movement. And that's that many me's, right? That we talked about. There is, because there is past, future, we are continuously stuck in this notion of time. So, so when religion talks about this, eternal space, like there's not going to be time and you're going to live forever and that kind of stuff, right? So that is a idea in Hindu philosophy where how can I shut down past and future and live in the now, right? That live in the now, basically, what the whole idea there is not that you're going to infinitely live forever. That's not the point. The point is that you're not impacting your current decisions on the past or the future, right? So effectively, for you, every moment is new moment, and you're looking at something afresh all the time. But we can't do that, right? We rely heavily on what am I going to get out of it, or I'm afraid of this, so I'm not going to do this, right? So a lot of that goes on. And, the idea is that we are driven by us dying, basically, right? So we are afraid. We want to secure ourselves as much as possible. That is typically what drives, and a lot of this security and fear of death has to do with what is going to happen tomorrow. So I need to protect this today because last time this happened. So I need to work on it right now, right? So mentally we are always moving back and forth. And we talked about the books and all of that. A lot of that, unfortunately, is ready-made answers. They're again part of those memories. So Gita that you're going to hear from me or Gandhi or Aurobindo Ghosh or anybody, it is their observation of their life in a way. But we have to investigate this for ourselves, is what Jiddu Krishnamurti says. If you cannot take that and look at life from the context of what you have read, then it is just a waste of energy, is what he calls it. So we have been just massive waste of energy. We have not, as a human being, we have not really been able to understand what Buddha has to say or anybody has to say. We have had many different teachers that have come and gone, and nothing we have in humanity has not moved an inch. Yes, technologically, we have done a lot of things. So these ready-made answers do not quite impact any of our living. And it only leads to confusions, as we see with Arjuna in chapter 1. And whatever solution he says that, I want to renunciate. I don't want to fight this war. But according to Jiddu Krishnamurti, it would be a broken solution. It will be a corrupt solution because he's going to go to the mountain and he's a warrior from within, and he's going to create a new war out there if he's not going to fight this war. So think of us, right? We run away from a situation hoping that something better is going to happen after we go away to this new place. But what doesn't change is you're always there. So if you look at your life's trajectory, reflecting on myself, that's what has happened. The pattern that I have had of different crises that I've gone through, the nature of the crisis is the same, no matter where I am, no matter what stage of life I am, right? So movement leads to endless struggle because, what happens is, what the mental movement happens because, you're inspired by something yet the current situation is giving you anger. So you don't want to be angry, yet you also want to be angry. So there's this separation that has happened. Now, because you have read something amazing that, hey, this person, Buddha, was a peaceful person, yet I am struggling with anger. Now you have really confused yourself in the sense that, you're going to try to be like Buddha, but then you're also trying to suppress your anger, except you cannot suppress the anger. And then, if you were ignorant, if you did not know about Buddha, maybe you were a little more milder version of that anger. But now that you know these higher ideas, sometimes, your reaction for that situation might be even stronger. So our brains are trained to solve complexity. That's the other thing, Occam's razor that I bring up here. We have a hard time looking at this simple thing that no matter what skin color we are the same. We bleed the same. We have the same heart. We have the same liver. We have the same compulsion to lie. We have the same compulsion to be greedy. We have the same compulsion to wanting to be happy. We all, oven, when it is hot, if we touch, we all get burnt. Same way. So there is something common theme across all of us. So this notion of oneness, when religion wants to talk about it, it just seems like this, idea that is just so foreign and so just not so achievable, that, we just think of that as something that, oh, I will do that for 1 hour worth of practice daily, maybe weekly, but that's about it, right? So it is going to be hard for me to implement in the real life is what and also, like, whenever we look at a problem. I mean, that was a different example, but you look at a problem, because we are coming at it in a biased fashion, the problem seems like something that is different than what the problem is, because there are so many biases that is making us look at that problem in a completely weird way. So now we are putting the judgment, and we are looking at it in a completely biased way, meaning you're adding more complexity to it. And why we do that is because complexity gives our brain a certain satisfaction if we solve that complexity. So we got to present to somebody saying, look, this is how complex this is, meaning to sometimes to yourself. And now I'm going to solve it. And look, I solved it, right? So again, it boosts the ego. So we are always trying to make things more complex. And we always miss the larger perspective because, again, we are looking at it from the past or where we are trying to go. The motive drives our vision. And goal blocks our view. We sometimes, it's as if like putting the picture right up close to the nose, and you're trying to find out what is on the left side of the panel or the right side of the panel. On your nose is the goal. So you cannot really take a larger perspective. So something that, my daughter said once, I was trying to do something, and, she said, Dad, you're creating a problem and trying to solve it. So which I thought was really, and she just like said that completely randomly. And I thought that was so poignant. So what JK, Jiddu Krishnamurti, talks about is being, where and here this duality that we have, this word has been thrown around many times. In this context, it is the duality of self and the other, or the other that we are trying to achieve, or this and that, right? So there is a conflict that is always going to stay. In this case, there is no mental movement, meaning you are not looking at the past or not where you want to go, and you're looking at that problem in a fresh way. So in this case, there's a quest that you have created for yourself, not to just accumulate the knowledge, right? Here, you have taken a journey, or you have gone on a hike or something, right? With that book, or it's more of a quest within, right? You're trying to seek this supreme wisdom about yourself as to why am I suffering and why this must be happening to me, or something like that, right? And so this is what he means, is that that journey of looking at something fresh, he calls it as nothingness. Buddha has used that term. Nagarjuna has used that term in Buddhism. So that is that shunyata, which is whatever problem you have, if you look at that problem without the lenses of the past or the future, it tends to dissolve. It tends to not stay the problem. And you are nothing at that point when you're looking at it. Nothing in the sense that you are not the past, and nor are you the future. So that's the supreme wisdom, is understanding that none of this is really, important in a way, right? Let memories not impact you. Here is where the attention or dhyana plays an important role, which is we consider dhyan as, or meditation as, sitting in a certain posture and trying to control thoughts. What Jiddu Krishnamurti argues is that that's not meditation. Meditation is that when you're interacting with the world, when something insulting happens to you, or something happens to you, something good comes across to your way that is going to boost your ego, all of these incidences, every incidence is an opportunity to meditate or think about it, or, what does that mean? Meaning you give it complete attention. Meaning you're going to look at that good that is happening to you or the bad that is happening to you fresh, not with the lenses of the past or the future. That is your complete attention. And, this is where, if you guys were with me in chapter, what was it, like chapter 9 or something, 9 or 10, where we did this Vibhuti exercise. The Vibhuti exercise was for you guys to kind of identify the moment when you were completely lost yourself. You lost yourself when you're looking at a mountain or looking at a flower or something like that, right? So there it was the glimpse of that attention, of that meditation. And now you could enjoy the beauty. Now, one question that I had asked you guys is that, let's say it was a rose. Do you like the rose because you like that object that is in front of you, or because you've heard over the decades, centuries, about the beauty of rose, right? The word rose and all the different pictures that you've seen about rose, and that word itself sort of brings about a certain baggage with it. Same thing, like when you are going through a bad situation, we can label it as, I'm angry, and all of that, right? So that anger at that point, is that are we going by the word, so that now we are spiraling down to actually prove that word is right? Do we really know that emotion correctly without labeling? And that requires for you to even forget about the understanding of the word anger, and look at that situation afresh, right? And that's the attention and meditation that Kay talks about. And in that particular meditation state, he says, is that it is pure love and complete care, and you're attending to the thing. And so whatever action that you're going to take at that point is going to be the correct action, not from ethics point of view or this. It will be by default correct action. And this is what Krishna is trying to tell to Arjun, is that, come at this war with a clear conscience, clear mind, and not with a biased mind that, oh, those are my brothers and sisters on the other side, because you have fought many wars in the past. You have butchered many people in the past. Why suddenly you want to protect these people? Is it because they are your family? But, there have been many, many things that have built up to this war. So this love and care will be automatic, and then the action stays correct that comes out of this. So one more thing about, one thing that he talks about is this I and you. So we certainly don't know ourselves. Don't read this on the left-hand side. I know you're going to continue reading, but try to pay attention, please. Attention. So this I is of some form, myself, but I don't know myself. But I think I'm this square. And I am looking at Jason, let's say, in the audience. And Jason is something, I have no idea who Jason is, but I think I know Jason. Now, when I say I know Jason, I know primarily from my own memory bank knowledge, what I've read about him and what interactions I've had. All of that is coming from the memory. So that is all this square. So I only see him as a square. So when I'm talking to Jason, what K argues is that, J. Krishnamurti argues is I really talking to you? Or is this square box talking to this square box? So it's kind of like a self-conversation that we are having. Whenever we are talking to somebody else, we are really talking to ourselves, is what he says. So any action, any observation, any conversation is with our image of self, right? And that image of self has really become our truth to ourselves. So this I, we really don't know, this yellow color that we don't know that, because we have never investigated what am I. So we think we are the software engineer or husband and brother and this all these labels that the world has put on us, and that is that square box, right? So this was an interesting thing. And another thing he talks about fact is that can we listen to the fact, right? When something is presented to you, can we look at it in a very pure, unbiased way? Or are we telling the fact what its content should be? And most of the time it's the latter, right? And he tends to call that as non-fact. So the world that we live in, or the whole humanity has lived in, has always been a bunch of non-facts. If you look at it, right? We have never really understood what the situation is trying to present to you. And the word names take over the actual feeling. We talked about that. And non-fact, tends to be, biased recording from generations, right? Your memory is not just your memory. That memory was based on so many generations of humans for you to understand that in a certain way. Pythagoras' theorem, a square equals b square plus c square, that's something that but for that memory to happen, it has relied on so many memories in the past. So one of the argument that JK says is that the knowledge that you have is not your knowledge. This knowledge has come from humanity. So your brain, your evolved brain, is not your brain. It is a brain that has evolved. It's a humanity's brain from so many generations. So that this kind of comes across in earlier chapters as well in Gita, where Krishna says to Arjun that, we are so proud of what we do, but during that pride, you have to understand that whatever you have achieved or the action that you're about to take, it's not just you. There has been gazillion amount of people that have contributed. Nature has contributed, universe has contributed, so many unsaid, unheard things that have contributed. So have the humility. So this is during the first 6 chapters, how you can approach an action. He brings that about, right? He says that it's not just you, there's generations behind everything that you are doing. The present, all that we know is based on collection of the past. Again, these programmed memories, programmed in the sense that, a lot of these things that we record every time, they're recorded unknown to us. And we are recording based on the social conditioning. So we are not even recording the actual thing as it is. We think we are, but we are biased by, maybe religion, maybe country, maybe whatnot, right? So many things. Um, and yeah, so future, all that we will know for generations is also based on the past, right? So one of the things, if you look at this past, present, future, is all, if you look at it, what J. Krishnamurti says is it is as if it is collapsed in the now. And the now has as if expanded, just from that actions perspective, your now is infinite time. if you look at it that way. So that is one way to look at it, I guess. And then, so how do you get to the fact, right? So here the term gunatit comes about, which is brought about in chapter 14, is there are these three gunas, right? Inertia, action, and something filled with intelligence, right? So tamas, rajas, and sattvic. But there is something beyond that, right? So these things are true in nature, but there's something beyond that. And that is something that, where there is no movement. And whatever you see here, if you don't rely on the past or the future, now a fact can emerge that you can actually understand properly without any conflict. And do not label with a conclusion, right? So this is an interesting thing. And the knowledge that we know, one of the things he recommends is inquiry. Have an opportunity whenever that is happening, something is happening, to inquire, observe that which is happening without recording anything, right? Because that recording is going to bias your future. So bias your action too. So build, and this building of knowledge, he says, can we observe something without that? So typically our knowledge gathering mechanism that we have learned from schools is past-based, books-based, which is great for us to transact in the world. But from psychological point of view, that's not the way to go about it, is what he says. Because it's past-based, imagine future, present is always lost, meaning that we are always living in an absence in a way. So I think we've spent a lot of time on this one through my conversation here. So one of the things that comes out about is that what drives this behavior is, we look at an experience and that builds our psychological knowledge about something as a memory, and that drives our thoughts. And, if you're thinking about something horrible is going to happen in future and this and that, right? So that then drives your action. So this train of thoughts drives your action. So that is the cycle that we are always in forever, right? For eternity. And this cycle can be considered as so there is this notion in Indian philosophy, Hindu philosophy, the notion of rebirth. Now, rebirth can mean, oh, after I physically die, there will be a rebirth, right? Sure. We don't know. Nobody knows. Or despite the fact that these books tend to tell us that, they know everything. And yes, you're going to have a reincarnation and all of that stuff. But who cares? I mean, nobody knows. A human being has written that book. So they wouldn't know that for 100%. So the way to look at this is that every moment that we are driving this cycle, that is a life, a mini life, if you will, right? So that particular cycle is going to drive your next cycle of events, because you're collecting all these memories, and every time there is a death and there is a rebirth, every new moment is a rebirth. And so we should look at this rebirth concept that we're going to touch upon later on, in this context, which is, how am I going moment to moment? Not rebirth in the context that I was born and I'm going to die and suddenly I'm going to be born as something else, like I don't know, pig or something. But we don't know. Nobody knows that for sure. So one of the things he says, that this knowledge collection is a problem, is what Krishnamurti says. But he says that this inquiry, attention, dhyana, or meditation, care, love, and then the understanding that you get is the jnana, or the wisdom that you get, right? And here, the idea is, which is talked about even in Gita, is the witnessing, in the sense that, while it is happening, you observe that, rather than getting pulled by the anger or the content, or like the fear and all of that stuff. So there's also an equanimity, right? This person, a person sometimes will make us assume certain things that, oh, oh my God, what I'm going to get from this person is just going to be something fearful, something unhappy, or something really happy. So we are already biased just by the name of the person or even his presence, right? So that is where we are biased all the time. So with this approach, um, we are looking at it afresh. So that is the notion of equanimity, right? Where everything is the same, or samatva. So there's two words. One is samatva and the other is mamatva. Mamatva means it's about me. I'm going to tell you what you are. And you are this. And this is all happening in your mind, right? So you're saying, oh, you are a greedy person, or you're a happy person, or you're not this, and blah, 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 right? So that is this I becomes important, and you are labeling things based on what your understanding of the world is. And so you have built this whole world based on your understanding. And that's also, by the way, the notion of creation psychologically, the world for everybody, right? So in that sense, we are all creators. All of this world that we are looking at, there is a word that they use, like, oh, it's all an imaginary world. None of it is real, except it is all real. It's all tangible. What they mean by that is that what we are seeing is not what is actually there. We are looking at the words, we are looking at the labels that we have given them. So in that sense, it is all imaginary. So because there's a bias involved there. Sun shines equally. So yeah, so here the attention, basically, it's as if like the sun, right? It does not differentiate between, let's say, China or USA. The sun is going to be the same. That's the idea. Me, not impacted by the miasma that is that the world out there, right? So we're not getting pulled in, dragged into it, even though we are participating in it. But miasma is growth and learning. It's not about running away from the miasma, which is what Arjuna was trying to do, right? Um, every occasion, every bad day is a growth opportunity. All the philosophies that we have read and everything that we have read, if it is not going to come to a point where life throws an exam at you, then it is kind of pointless, the reading. It is just a check mark box, right? So when we are trying to stay fresh, this phrase that comes to mind is the rolling stone gathers no moss. So that is, every point is a flowing river. And if you can roll with it, you're not going to collect all kinds of baggage with you, right? And also, everyone is seeking a fresh start, like when you're interacting with somebody, your biases are blocking maybe the other person to even improve or, do something different. So giving them that opportunity is also something that is the care and love that you show, not just to people that you like, but also anybody, right? And here there's only unidirectional flow. You inquire and then there's a take action. That's it. So you have that attention and you're taking the action immediately. So it's not like thinking about it and then, looking at your past experiences and knowledge and memory and then trying to do something, because that would be a very biased action. So that's a difference. I think we have spent a lot of time on attention, though this phrase we have talked about in the past. I think this is from the Chinese philosopher, maybe Li Bai. The birds have vanished down the sky. Now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. So there are moments like this in your life, right, where you are completely absorbed. What does that mean? You are absorbed. The you has vanished. The ego has vanished. The I has vanished. And the beauty is all that stays. And so we have covered this throughout this earlier part that I've talked about. Um, the equanimity, okay. Not getting dragged by three gunas. We're going to talk about that. We are lost in matter. We live unconsciously, right? So we sometimes we forget that we are conscious beings because we get so pulled into the material side of things. And material side of things is not just the tangible side of things, but also the anger and everything, right? So that's a completely unconscious, like, you're not aware what you're doing, and you regret. I'm part of one of them. Psychologically, we are all the same. What that means is there is this notion of same me, right? Within all of us. Content of our consciousness is similar. So one way to look at that is, because we are conscious, we can experience the pain or the pleasure or the anger or sadness and all these life's woes in a way, right? Which means consciousness is the ground on which all of these interactions play. Without consciousness, none of this is going to happen, right? So if you're a dead body, none of this is going to work for you. But because the ground is the same, the content of that ground is different, maybe, right? Different in the sense, like on a given moment, maybe you're happier than me, or you're angrier than me, right? So from that point of view, it is changing from time to time, but otherwise, the content of it, the fears and anger and pleasures and all of that is exactly the same for all of us. We have the same kind of thing. We want to take care of our kids. We want to take care of our friends and all of that stuff, right? The content of our consciousness is similar. And because our consciousness, the content of it is similar, our problems also are arising from that same place, because of all our anger and fear and all of that stuff. And so this goes back to the notion of the Brahman, right? We have talked about this, um, which is in all of us everywhere, and that is the same consciousness, right? But even though we have that, we tend to abuse it, right? Abuse it in the sense that we don't realize that it is the same consciousness I have and you have. So we don't lend the same empathy, if you will, to the other person. So we tend to kind of label them, or outcast them or whatnot, right? Or bring them even closer to you, because you love them now even more, because he has a, whatnot, right? You really like the way he looks, or, maybe, he has a bigger house or whatnot, right? Um, um, so it biases our view of what we are conscious of, right? So the content now changes based on, the object changes based on the content that you're carrying in the consciousness, right? So now you are biased. And what he says is that needs to be cleansed. That consciousness has to be cleansed. All that content, all that garbage of jealousy, envy, this and that, and biases and all of that has to be removed. Easier said than done. So this is where Gita's first 6 chapters, they cover karma yoga, right? Purifying the action. So bringing about a humility, understanding the larger context of what you're doing, and all of that stuff plays an important role. And not looking at the past and all of that. I think we talked about the vibhuti portion. Um, so we started with disorder, and the idea is there is disorder everywhere. And part of it has been the overall, I don't mean educational system, but our psychological upbringing, education that we go through, not just after when you were born, but what your parents learned, because what you're going to learn is from the parents or the neighbors or the society. They have learned from the generations before them and generations before them. So this has been going on and transferred, and we have been conditioned in a certain way that leads to a general disorder on the planet, right? And the idea is, how do we reach order and state of no problems or freedom or liberation, right? So that's where we want to be. And a lot of our actions tend to be out of fear or desire, conditioned action. And obviously, we know that this is bad. When somebody puts it in this context, we immediately can look at this sentence and say, yes, yeah, there's nothing new there. That is wrong. Except when we go about it, it's it stays the same, right? We don't really utilize that in real life. And then, freedom word is thrown around a lot. And the most common misconception is like whatever one wants to do is the freedom. While that is one thing, but in the context of really understanding the higher philosophy in Hinduism or in any religion for that matter, I would say, or any philosophy, um, uh, it is when the action is free of conditionings, right? So you have the freedom in that given moment to really stay attentive, but not biased. And that is the freedom that you have chosen. But because most of the time what happens is we do something because it will look good or look bad. So really, we are doing it for that other. So that would be a great memory for others. And then it will be posted on Instagram or something, right? So which means that we are bound to that other. So we think whatever freedom we have is really not freedom because you're really doing it based on what that other person wants you to do, not verbally in the words, but through the conditioning. Society expects you to do something like this, right? So this free of conditioning type of action is the correct action, right? And that if this attention becomes the constant lifestyle, J. Krishnamurti says that becomes the constant, right? That becomes the thing, right? And there's one more thing that Krishna also says that, you choose something driven by a confusion that you have or a dilemma that you have or a problem that you have. Try to go deeper within, try to, explore within. But instead, what do? We look at something and we go, okay, this is not good. So we jump to yet another solution and then jump to yet another solution. So we're going from one to one to one to the next. Now in Sanskrit, the word that they use here is polygamous, actually. So we are not true to the thing that you have relied on to help you with your problems in this life, right? All that does is it just leads to more confusion. And now, you already had many me's. With all these philosophies, you have multiplied them by all the philosophies that you have read. And it's just a whole bunch of dualities that you have created. Um, and then suddenly the action that you're going to take will be driven by either Buddha in your mind or Krishna in your mind or whatever religion or some priest or some guru or whatnot, right? So it's really not freedom. And that is that cycle of, your action, knowledge, action cycle, right? So you're continuously making mistakes. And yeah. Okay. So just quickly about uh, where in East and West type of thinking, Western philosophy, there's all these different things. Thales said that everything is water. Anaximander said that abstract substances that takes up forms, right? So there's Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Parmenides, who said change is illusory, and sophists had their point of view and all of that, right? So I was listening to a lecturer, and I thought that was a really interesting take on all of these different things. And then he comes to Socrates, where knowledge is virtue. And then there is a dialectic method that is being presented there. And the idea is to ask the right questions and let the other person realize on their own. And so the key thing is remembering something, you already know it. So the idea is, and that is that self-inquiry that Jiddu Krishnamurti also talks about. And I think that's what Socrates was alluding to. And then Plato had this whole idea of, whole philosophy around theory of idea. And this is what that means, or is it idea or ideal? I forget now. But the thing is that there is an abstract ideal, and we are all on this planet a derivation from that. And we have come down here, and because all desires and everything drive us, we are stuck in this plane, and we never meet the ideal. And our desires are driving all of this, right? There's a dichotomy of existence, is that what they talk about. And things that stay perfect and universal, and that's the idea. And then empirical is our world down here. There's a continuous change, and the theory is that souls with perfect knowledge and ignorance due to desire, now he sinks into the world. Perfectness is forgotten because now you're lost in the world's transactions, influenced by anger, desire, and then, you come back to birth. And, while this cycle is going on, maybe you remember, that this has happened to me in the past, and why am I doing this again? And you hopefully don't get dragged down by the anger or desire, and you're remembering now suddenly what is the ideal state. And there is that innate knowledge that gets built inside us, and experience and recollection and eventual liberation. So the point of why I wanted to present this as like this is that the notion of liberation or moksha is very important in the East. In the Western plethora of different philosophies, I think it's only one time that gets mentioned, right, in Plato, by Plato, that we want to be liberated from this world somehow. But so that is the Western philosophy, right? So prominent in Indian philosophy, there has not been much discussion. Now, matter and soul tends to be heavily discussed in a lot of the Western philosophies. But this is where, the approach on how to look at life is maybe slightly different, depending on the culture, East or West. In the Eastern philosophies or books, suffering becomes the highlight of their thing, right? Life is suffering. There is dilemmas, and then there is liberation. And so there, philosophy, the word for philosophy is darshan. Darshan literally means seeing. I'm seeing this. And the philosophy and religion is all rolled into one thing. So there is 33 or whatever million gods and all of that stuff. Those are mythologies guiding towards the philosophy, if you will. And the view of self, others, and world gets dictated by this kind of thought process that life is suffering, but you can get out of it, And in one way or the other, even a lost Indian will somehow think of a problem in that sense, that, we got to transcend this to really make a difference on this particular job or this action that I want to take. Um, and then there is also this notion of rebirth. So what rebirth does is it allows you to kind of reevaluate your day-to-day actions. So you suddenly, be it from ignorance or be it from fear, whatever you do, you think that you are somehow going to repay in the future. So it kind of controls it's an auto-regulation, if you will. Or something bad happens, you immediately, rather than after all the fights have happened and all of that stuff has happened, blaming and all that, you come to a place where you say, ah, shit, I must have done something horrible in the past, and that's why I'm here, right? And then that gives you a positive way to start moving past it, if you will, right? So this soul comes back type of a notion, rebirth or karma, gives you a different, almost positive outlook of how to deal with day-to-day problems, if you will, right? And that is very ingrained in Indian society. Like you go to the most remotest village and they will know immediately what karma is or what rebirth is. Nobody knows if there is such a thing, but it kind of guides your thought process. Now, on the West, a lot of it is experience. There's a lot of reasoning that goes on. Why this and why that, and X is this and Y is this and that. So none of this has to do directly with life suffering, if you will. So it is almost like you're living your life, but you're trying to solve the problem of right angle triangle in case of Pythagoras. While that is important, Pythagoras himself was a very important philosopher. So he had his own school of thinking and all of that stuff, right? But what we only remember from him is the Pythagoras theorem. But he did influence Plato and everybody, right? So it's not like it has gone waste. But there is a certain way of looking at things as if the thing is outside and I need to analyze it. And in the East, it tends to be more psychological focus, if you will. I don't know how to present it, but so this approach of looking at something as if it is outside me and I'm going to resolve it or solve it or fix it brings about a different way of looking at the world. So the philosophy here is philosophy, literally the word means love of knowledge. Love of knowledge means I love that. So there is already this separation. So what you're saying is you are there to admire the philosophy, not that I can apply this anything to my life. Now, if it applies once in a while, I'm okay with that. But it is not a life or death existential crisis type of a problem. So it is more of a love of knowledge is what drives this. And if you look at philosophers and everybody, they tend to be almost kind of non-religious, if you will. And so there's no religion has its own track of philosophy going on, and philosophers are separated from there. And the view of world from that point of view is that this life is it, right? I'm going to get this 50, 60 years of life that I have, or whatever, 70, 80, these days, 90. And that kind of a view that me exists only here for this much period of time, then that controls our choices in the world, right? So we are not as careful, if you will. And now what has happened is a lot of the Eastern style of thinking is kind of dying away. And we all are West now. We are all Western, if you will, or, West type of philosophy kind of a thinking process. So what that does is it is all about me and now I need this pleasure immediately. Doesn't matter how I'm going to be plundering the planet or what it is going to do to my neighbor or the other person and all of that, right? So there is these different kinds of thinking that kind of bring you to a certain place. So, okay. So I'm now going to go directly into the different verses, but I don't know, we can take a 5-minute pause here, but only 5 minutes. So Elizabeth.
Hi, Shashi. Can I just ask one question? It'll just take 1 minute.
Sure.
So far, on the topics we've covered, my question is about the part where you said something like, how according to this philosophy, we are to look inwards and seek solutions to problems inside us. It's not somewhere outside, it's within us.
Yeah.
But the issue is, although I believe that's what I try to practice, I find that many people, right, many people around me are not practicing. How do I say this? They're doing something else. They're doing people are seeking external validation, quick fixes to problems outside of them, like they will be pointing here saying, oh, they're very vocal, they're looking outside themselves constantly, complaining. Like, you already know what they're thinking because they're telling you, they're not looking inside. And so now, because I'm around other people, right, they're derailing me from my own inward process that I'm supposed to be doing. It's like they're kind of distracting me,
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe this. So how do you deal with that?
I know. Yeah. So this is where the inner silence, and silence, as we know, we tend to think that the mountain is the silence, right? Where there's no noise of the cars and all that. But the silence is more inside, where whatever external noise is going on, it we want to stay completely unbiased of this other person, whatever is coming across to you. And the idea is that how can you stay attentive and focus to whatever they're saying? It could be garbage. It could be complete garbage. Now it is up to you to decide how useful that is for your life. It is easier said than done. I have to tell you, I'm in the same boat as you are. But these are the words from Krishnamurti, And he himself says that if you look at what I'm saying as Krishnamurti's words, you're never going to be successful, because you need to, this has to be your own understanding. Now I'm helping you to come to that understanding. Don't look at me as a guru. Don't look at any of these books as a solution. You need to come to this solution on your own. You are your own Buddha. You need to come to that though. So you don't want to do this because you like this philosophy, but when you experiment with it in day to day, in this noise, with other people being whatever they are being, and it is disturbing you. Now, maybe at that point of time, you don't want to be biased about that person upfront, like, oh, they are horrible, or they are this, and they are very materialistic and all that. That's their problem, not your problem, right? So you can try to approach it the way you want to approach it, which is, I'm not going to record this as a bad event, and I'm not going to be biased against this person. My love is going to be constant, right? And the idea is, when you leave that table, you are not going to leave as a disturbed person. This is not a guarantee. This is something that you have to experiment. And once you learn it, you're going to remember that forever, that when you turn on the oven, you don't want to place your hand on the stove. It's going to be burning your hand. That's your understanding, not because your dad told you that. You see what I mean? So this has to be done, and it has to be your inner understanding. And, one Swami says it really nicely, is that this wisdom that we are going to cover about the three gunas, this is not for you to go out in the world and say, oh, you are too sattvic, or you're too rajasic, or you're too tamasic, and all of that stuff. You're a lazy person, or you are too much behind your goals and all that. No, this is more for our own observation of ourselves. Hopefully that helps. So
yes, that's great. Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the actual text, but this was important for us to bring everybody to the understanding of the so-called knowledge. And we are going to get through this next set of things really quickly here. So give me a second. Um, So there are four levels of wisdom that come across in Indian philosophy. Is that one that tends to help us make more money, or wealth, if you will. That is worldly. That is called as artha. And then there is kamna or kama. This is about my mental satisfaction, right? It is driven by my mental satisfaction. So now I have enough riches and everything is good, but now I want my mental pleasure. And then there is dharma, right? Now I have mental pleasure, but now I want to do the right thing, So I've had enough fun events and entertainment, and, your fill is done, like no more, right? So now you are trying to walk towards yourself, right? So we all go through these phases, and so we have spent a lot of time on this. I don't want to spend too much time here. The main thing I want to come to is the, oh, these were some notes that I was taking. I don't think I ever finished this, but so we have five senses, and there are three elements. The world is composed of three gunas, or three elements. And the elements tend to be broken down like this, right? There is something that makes us inertial, in the sense that we don't want to move, and something that brings about that movement. And then there is, something that wants us to get to the knowledge of that, right? So something that makes us lazy or restful, action. And then we want to understand it as with our intelligence as to why am I doing this, right? So so these three, tamas, rajas, and sattva, So this philosophy comes from something called as Sankhya in Hindu philosophy, and Gita kind of takes that and puts it there. And they do give credit to Sankhya, but Sankhya means numbers based, not numerology, but numbers based. So they thought of this world to be really everything can be broken down into these three things, right? Much like what we talked about the Western world, where, one of the philosophers said that everything is just water, or everything is just changing, or everything is permanent, all of that kind of stuff. So this is yet another philosophy that the Indian diaspora out there kind of thought of. Just to, the why are these philosophies important is that I think it's like every generation or every human being is trying to understand there's a lot of unknowns in life. How do you explain that, right? And everybody comes up with their theory. There's theory of universe, right? Nobody knows the truth. We are knowing more and more, but we don't know how this universe came about. Definitely not meant to just, so like I said, right? So these three things are more for internal observation. And a lot of the knowledge that you're collecting is more meant to analyze oneself, not memory driven again, right? So I think we covered a lot of this. So I'm going to skip through this, but basically come to this breakdown of the three things, right? So there is this idealistic state, which is the gunatit state, which is going beyond the gunas or beyond these three attributes. And so there's the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And so if we look at on the right-hand side here, what we are talking about is that, if you think about, let's say, we were asleep. So we're almost, full of inertia at that point, right? So there's nothing, like we had no action, nothing. And then you kind of like wake up and, suddenly more consciousness comes about, and all these elements become suddenly real. Fear, anger, desires, right? So now you're fully aware. And so this is our day to day. We can still get stuck in any of these states of our sleep and wake cycle, if you will, and that kind of drives our where we fit into this category here, if you will. And the idea is that we want to move up here. All right. So when you're stuck down here, karma, action, and even below that is ajnana or ignorance. And this is the state of jivatma. This is the state of this condition, this human being, where I am I and Jason is Jason, and everybody is different, and everybody is jealous of the other person or happy with somebody and all of that stuff, right? So all of that is going on here. But you come up here, Paramatma, and this is now you've reached the core of each human being. And at that core is the same, and that is the God, or that's the Paramatma, right? And that you only can get there with this kind of a wisdom, a different understanding of the world. So you understand that out there, there might be something that is tamas, or even within you, there are times when you are lazy, ignorance. There is a layer on the knowledge, so even though you have knowledge, you are resisting to use it. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, ignorance, and your will, ignorance will take over during that state. Action can reduce the, so now when you're in this kind of a state, you're now just kind of lethargic, or not just physically, but even mentally, you're not moving past a certain state. So that's when you want to wake up this particular property in you, which is the Rajas property, which is get into some action, like get yourself busy into doing something, rather than, many times, when depression hits you, you can get driven into these kind of places where, you just don't get interested in anything. And then now you're getting further pushed down into that state. Or some people will choose not to do anything, and they are just a sedentary lifestyle, and they're just focused on just not doing anything. That's it. And so procrastinate everything. And it's from Gita's point of view, it's a bit of a confused state. And you know, uh, alcohol plays a role there, and all that stuff that can happen. So one of the things that he covers here is that when he talks about these features, he also talks about what happens rebirth-wise. So, and I told you, like, rebirth has two ways to look at it. One is alive and death and again alive. But rebirth also means what happens moment to moment, right? He says in poetic language, obviously, in Gita, that rebirth for this kind of a state will be among lesser life forms. You don't have awareness of what you are put up on this planet to do. And you have no clue about that. So now you are going further down in the gradation of humanity, if you will, more towards the animal state. So this, when I look at it from moment to moment point of view, it's almost like you're reaching a vegetative state, right? If you are just a couch potato, that is just going to settle you into the state, which is not a human state, where human has a creativity, action, wants to do something and all of that stuff. So you are going deeper further down on this scale, right? But this is where, if you can remember that you're a human being and you can identify an action that you can do, so you start moving up the chain here. And that next level would be the rajas. Now, one thing with the rajas is when this tends to be most of us actually, because we are doing a lot of actions, and actions meaning work. We're taking care of kids, we are taking care of our parents, and work-wise, trying to keep the boss happy and all of that stuff. And invariably it leads to a lot of suffering, dealing with friends like we talked about earlier and all of that. So anger, desire, and this also results into a lot of suffering. And if you remember, well, I don't know if any, maybe Jason remembers, long time ago, one of the questions that Arjuna asks is, what is sin? And Krishna's response is that this anger and desire within us is the truest sin, and everything comes out of that. So that's the state we are in here. And here, literally, we are many minds, many me's. And that leads to a lot of confusion, as we spoke about earlier. And it also leads to, much like here, it led to laziness. Here, it leads to doership. Like, I did this, I want to do this, and I am going to win this, and that kind of stuff. And I want to make more. Greed, being greedful. And that basically takes over. And now here you have two ways to go about this. One is you can change your action that you're doing without attaching yourself to the goal, which is the karma yoga, right? And can take you start moving up the ladder up here, right? But you can also have too much action, too much greed, will start taking us down. Over time, your body is not going to keep up, your mind is not going to keep up, and you don't know anything about this top part here. And you're going to become a vegetative thing, confused, and inertia, and all of that is going to set in, and you're going to become tamasic here, because you're going to be super tired. And here, if death happens, that's how they talk about rebirth in the poetry. But the way I take this is, again, moment to moment. When one action is done, if that action, whatever you have done, was out of greed, and you had a motive to make more money or whatnot, right? That sets up your next action, right? Your next moment is based on that earlier moment, because that's what you're learning, right, over time. So here the rebirth, Krishna says, is among humans. So you come back to the human state after death, meaning you have the craving to do more of the actions that are going to satisfy your never-ending desires. So you do want to be a human, so you will get that phase. But the way I understand this is that from moment to moment, you're again going to be in this cycle of karma, where you are going to be doing destruction or some creation, but this constant thing is going to go on. You're going to keep building up more karma and all of that stuff. And also, one key thing here is that the state, the earlier state does not ever help you get up here, right, in the ideal state. But this state as a human being or animals, right? Here they say that the lesser life forms is where you're going to end up. So one of the things that they say is animals do not reach that upper level. So you have to be in this state, human state, where you are making a lot of mistakes, greed is driving you, and all of that, there's chaos and all of that, right? That's the state that is going to actually um, bring you closer to liberation, because you can't be liberated just because you run away into the mountains. Obviously, there's nothing there. Obviously, there's no reason for you to be greedy there. So that's not the point. So that's no liberation, according to Gita, right? You have to be in this miasma, in this mess, to really feel or go up, the ladder, if you will. And here, the sattvic person now has looked at all these actions, and there's a bit of a clarity that he has. There's not too much mental confusion, and it's a mind that is ready to understand the knowledge. And he feels he is happy, like he can recognize that within him, like the conversation that we had earlier about the question with Elizabeth about one is disturbed by how people are behaving. But if you look at it from sattvic point of view or sattva point of view, you will realize in that moment that, oh, yes, there was all these nonsense going around me, but boy, I stayed undisturbed and I'm out of it. And I have no hatred towards these people, nor do I want to attach myself to them, right? So there is a certain level of happiness that you can get out of that, and nothing for you to display or put out on Instagram. That's not the point. It's just this internal thing. And much like how this is sort of anger and desire based, and so the outcome is always sin, pleasure, pain, you're running away from it. So according to Gita, literally everything you do, be it even helping a poor person, but if that comes out of some expectation, that's a sin. So here, though, what happens is now you are actually virtuous. So this is a good thing. This is actually getting close to the state called as heaven. This is getting you close to the state called as hell, if you will. And here, this happiness that you're getting, that is your immediate heaven, if you will, right? There's no heaven out there after death. Right there in that moment, within those people who are bothering you, you have just experienced a notion of heaven, right? That's how I see it. But what can happen is that because you did that and you tolerated these people, that ego might set in. You might start feeling better than these other people, right? Now, what is happening is you are moving down the ladder because you're going to want to do more of that. So the desire sets in for you to keep craving for that. And that desire is now you are sinning. even though you're nice to these other people and your mind is not feeling disturbed, but your mind is now jumping to that, wanting to be to that state. So this want, or I want it, I is going to play a major role. So that is one of the problems with this state is these virtues can make you start walking towards hell, if you will. So heaven is not a permanent state. Heaven is not the ultimate goal in Indian philosophy. Heaven is a transitory state. And then, something will happen and you're going to be dropped down to hell. And what happens here is that ego will start taking us down. But here you can come to a point where you can start moving upwards. You look at this and you also look at this happiness that you're getting in this situation. It doesn't impact you. You're just very zen about it. Like, okay, this happened, that's fine. And that happened, that's fine too. So there is a different kind of a mindset where now this feeling of sattvic is not going to impact you. Feeling of rajasic is not going to impact you. And a lot of this. And if people around you are rajasic and tamasic, that's not going to impact you. So you have a way to look at that. It's not about, again, just that out there. There might be a lot of anger emotions that are happening within you that is going to drive you towards one of these states. Now, when you come here, there's a way for you to look at those things without any bias. Meaning, you're not going to look at your anger and say, oh my God, Buddha said not to be angry and shit, I'm a terrible person and all that, right? So that self-judgment also is a problem, right? So now the idea with the attention that I talked about earlier is not just attention in a situation with other human beings, but also attention towards yourself. So there is this understanding of love and nurture, not just with other human beings, but also with yourself. And this is where, now you're coming from the world closer to your mind. And, we talked about the field. This is the whole field, our mind and thoughts and intellect and anger, our senses and the world. And the knower. Knower is observing them. Knower does not he is gunatit, meaning he is looking at these three states of the field. The field is made up of these three things, the rajas, tamas, and all of that, right? The body itself, the vitality, and the mind is how one Swami presents it. So the world is filled with that, and I am filled with that too. I am part of this world. But I'm going to observe it. I'm the observer. I am the knower. I can know this, and this is not going to impact me. All these elements are playing with each other, and I'm going to stay out of it in a way, right? So the one that lights the three state. So all of this is happening, the vitality, the body, and all of that makes sense only because you realize that I'm a conscious being. So there's consciousness that is playing important, right? So as if my consciousness is making me realize that I'm angry. If I was not conscious, there wouldn't be any anger. And then now you can address that anger in a different way. And you're not going to say, I am angry, meaning you become anger, if you will. So you get dragged down by that particular emotion. So you are now coming down into these states down here. And you can stay the observer without any guilt nor pride, right? So you're not going to be guilty about something that you might have done, nor are you going to be too happy because you're getting accolades. And no dislikes towards things, towards actions. And all you care about is that state of non-duality with the whole planet, all human beings, regardless of how horrible they might be. Now, if you want, and whatever action that comes out of that, like let's say you are a warrior or you are an soldier or, you are a president or whatnot, right? From this state of mind, a certain action is come about out of you. which might involve slapping the other person. Please don't do that. But if that is the action that comes out of it, that's all virtue. That's all a good thing. But if it comes out of anger, desire, then that's always going to be a sin. All right. So with this, maybe now, if you guys want to go and read chapter 14 and then chapter 15 and then come back next time, maybe it could be a bit more interesting.